Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Torelli. I'm the chairman of the Orange County IDA and Orange County Funding Corporation. Today is Wednesday, January 4th, 2023. Happy New Year to all. It's approximately 5:36 p.m. and we'll call this committee meeting, the Governance Committee meeting, to order. If we all please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do roll call, Bill.
Okay, Michael Torelli.
Present.
Dean Tamburri.
Present.
Vincent Odock.
Present.
Good. 3 of our 4 committee members are present. Giovanni Palladino is not present. He may join us remotely. Myself, Bill Fioravanti, CEO of the agency. I'm here, of course. And our general counsel, Susan Katzoff, from Bousquet Holstein, is on via Zoom, and also on Zoom is Dennis Brady from 88 Studios, our
First agenda item for today is to approve the minutes from 6/29/2022 and 8/2/2022 committee meeting. Now, is that from this committee?
It is from this committee, and council had guided us a few months back, at least the staff, making it clear that minutes should be approved by the committee that the minutes for. So just like finance, we're approving our minutes for finance committee meetings in that committee. Same thing for governance, and we had 2 prior meetings. And now that
such a long time ago, I don't know.
It really is.
Thank you.
So yeah, again, August 2nd and June 29th meeting.
Okay. We have the meetings as presented. Any changes? Discussion? Entertain a motion to approve. Motion. Thank you, Dean. Second, Dr. Odock. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously with 3. Quick adjustment to or just a quick amendment to the agenda. Mm-hmm. The next one is going to be review the recapture policy, but it's also going to be the project approval policy, because they're all embedded in our UTEP policy. So I'll turn this over to Bill and council to talk about what we have and lead us through a conversation about what we're looking to do, I think, to simplify and clean things up and make things easier for the general public to, one, find and understand, and not make it as complicated as it has been. Bill and council, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start. First of all, this is what we're going through with this governance committee meeting and subsequent meetings. I think several for this year is reviewing our major policies. It's time. We've obviously had to do a lot of reformation work with getting this agency cleaned up from malfeasance that occurred 20+ months ago. At least, we came at the end of that. We're back to work. We're incentivizing projects, and we've obviously done a lot of work already to kind of rebuild the processes and such in the agency. But we want to now, with this group, now that we have real cohesion of the board and we have a full board, we want to start looking at our policies and have this board's imprint be on the policies going forward. We're starting with a couple subjects today: the recapture policy and the project approval policy, and then after that we can talk about our fee schedule. I'll start with the recapture policy, and council Sue Katzoff, of course, can chime in at any time, and then I'll have her actually address the project approval component of it. But I shared this document earlier this week with the committee. First of all, it's showing the current recapture policy, which is just a section F of our UTEP. It's in our uniform tax exemption policy right now. And we're looking to pull it out because really, I don't know, Sue, if it's per GML or if it's more ABO, but it really should be a standalone policy, correct?
That is correct, and it is pursuant to the general municipal law.
So you'll see it's very easy just to review the section F that again is currently in our UTEP. It isn't terribly specific, but that is something you want to consider when you're looking at the new language. Is do you want to leave some room for some gray area, because so many obviously scenarios are different. But the second page is where it starts with what's proposed, and this is based upon language that was used for another one of Bousquet Holstein's clients, so that we're looking at. Sue and I did go through this line by line. There are a number of areas, certainly, obviously, you can decide if you want to consider all of this at all, if you entertain it or not. And then if you do, there are specific sections in here that I think are certainly open to some changes. For example, section 3, where it really gets into recapture or some of the other remedies from someone not complying. For example, section 3, letter B and letter C talks about if a project fails to reach or maintain at least 85% of the job creation figures, then you can recapture. The second is if they only make a capital investment, they say they're going to invest X dollars. If it's only 85% of that, that's another reason. That's an example where it's leaving some gray area, not because we want to leave room for someone to not comply. It's just that we could be, as an agency, we could be dealing with every project that, is one job shy, something like that. So it does leave room for, a little room for error before we're really, compelled to really take action. The 85% is an example where you could discuss and, maybe land somewhere.
A question there, Bill.
Sure.
Not to confuse it. This is not our labor policy. This is, even though the percentage is the same, this is 85% of what they fill out in their application.
Exactly.
That says that they're going to be creating jobs.
Correct. Permanent jobs.
Permanent jobs, yeah.
This is
Okay.
Thank you.
Or investment. So basically,
That's the second item.
Yeah, that's the second item.
Correct.
Safe.
If it's $100 million project, and they only invest 80 million, then they're shy of 85%.
well, that makes a lot of sense to me, because a lot of these are construction related, and obviously those costs fluctuate.
Yeah, and their estimates, correct. Their estimates when they put it on a piece of paper, more than likely, at least recently, they're all going up. But you never know. Maybe there is a period of time where there's an economy of scale or something like that, where they can do something a little bit less. But we'll look at it on a case by case basis.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, how do we know where they are? They give us.
They do have to report to us. So I'll let you chime in on the specifics of annual reporting and such requirements. So Dean is asking, how do we know that the values for job figures or capital investment are accurate?
So for jobs, they report to you on an annual basis. They have, but I apologize, it's either 3 or 5 years under your documents to create the number of proposed jobs once they have completed construction. And so the IDA staff monitors that on an annual basis. There is reporting that has to go on. They submit that reporting to you. If they should fail to report, that's an event of default, and that's another basis for recapture under here. But assuming they comply and they report, someone on Bill's staff and your staff is looking at those numbers and comparing it to what they projected in their application and annually telling Bill they made it, they didn't make it, and then you reach out to the company and get more information. With respect to the investment.
Is that also part of the Paris reporting on these projects?
They need to respond to this.
Yeah, yes. And the same thing with the capital investment. First of all, you generally know about the capital investment because you've seen the mortgage. You know how much they're financing. You can tell from other documents they submit, but it's also a question, I believe, on your annual reporting questionnaire. And so they submit that to you. And again, it's a matter of just keeping a spreadsheet. Like, here's project A, here was their job count that they projected, here's their total investment. And then on an annual basis, when they submit that form, Bill and his staff are cross-referencing.
And I'm not doing a great job of stepping you through this item by item, but starting at the beginning of, again, page 2, beginning of the proposed recapture policy, the statement of purpose basically cites the laws and such, so that why we have to do this. The second part, Roman numeral 2, mandatory recapture of the New York State portion of sales and use tax. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I just needed clarification. A situation where company has gotten, let's say, pilots for 15 years, and then close to the end of that year, sold, either sold or it started is not going to get into the payment when the time comes, and then sells the project, sells the company to some other, and that happened. And if so,
This
what
is years into the agreement, say year
Yes,
12, for
yes,
example,
and
with
then
15,000?
suddenly, I think I read that somewhere. I can't remember.
Yeah, so we've had that instance once or twice already, Dr. Odak, where a company maybe changed names or was bought by a bigger company.
Yes.
And we have a procedure with an assignment. Okay, so if they're gonna keep the facility open, they're gonna keep all the commitments, then you assign it, so there's a transaction that takes place that goes from entity number one to
Okay.
entity number two, and it keeps on going. It's not brand new, it doesn't start from scratch again, but
Yes.
it just changes the name, and then that moves forward.
Okay.
You guys look like you're electing the Speaker of the House.
This is a lot easier than that. We would actually get it done, probably.
I think you would. You guys good?
We're good, man, thank you.
Thank you guys for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say you're absolutely right in how you described it to Dr. Odak. And I just, for everyone's comfort, if that were to happen, as it has in the past, the company would have to come to the agency and ask you for permission to be able to transfer the project to a new owner. So you would know that it was happening.
They would seek our consent.
Yeah.
On the section 2, it goes into the New York State portion of sales and use tax.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify.
please, yeah, if you could.
So that's a requirement, and
That's a
it's
requirement.
cited under GML. And Sue had explained that may be a reason why prior administration, left it out, because it is a requirement of the law, but she felt it was important to have it explicitly listed. We are required to recoup the state's portion of sales and use tax if any of these
defaults or.
exactly. So this section 2 is all about recapturing the state's portion because we are required to do so. And you see, what the reasons are, if the project wasn't entitled to it, if they claimed sales tax exemption in excess of the amount authorized by the IDA, if the property or services weren't authorized for us, and if they, failed to comply with the material condition of our agreements with. So that really spells that out. And is that pretty boilerplate, would you say, section 2? Similar language that other IDAs would use, since we all comply with the same requirements?
Yes, because it is set out in the general municipal law. So it's not something I made up. It's just what the statute says. So I literally took the statute and converted it into a policy.
And the last 2 items there, report within 30 days of providing any financial assistance. This is this ST60 form that we use, that's required. And then there's an annual report, which we've been talking staff-wise and with Sue in greater detail. What is it, ST360? No,
340.
number 40, exactly. Okay, so that's, again, the New York State piece. Section 3 is about our specific recapture component of this. And the reasons for it would be, A, if, again, they claim sales tax exemption in excess of the amount they were authorized. The second, B, would be if they fail, we just covered this a minute ago, fail to reach and maintain at least 85% of the employment requirements for job creation. C, if they fail to invest 85% of the value they told us they were going to. D, if they fail to provide doctor, the agency, the information that we need to confirm. So all of that is, I guess you would ask that, Dean, if that's a reason for us to recapture, or if there's any other action or scenario that results in default of the project documents. That's in there.
Yep.
as well.
And-
So a quick question here. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to point out, section 2 only deals with the state's portion of the sales and use tax exemption that you award. Section 3 deals with everything else. So it's recapture of the county's portion, it's recapture of any mortgage recording tax exemption you might give, and it's a recapture of any pilot that you may have awarded. So section 3 is everything other than the state's portion.
That was my question. Thank you.
Great, perfect. Section 4 talks about an annual assessment. This is something, frankly, I was not familiar with. We've informally been doing it most recently, but again, it's something that Sue brought our attention to, and that we've talked to as a staff. We are kind of doing, as you were right, Sue, we're doing it really generally, but just not what we realized with this formal process. but we have to be reviewing these ST-340s that tell us what's been claimed. We have to compare them with the project documents to make sure that, again, they're not claiming any amount in excess of what was approved. And if we see any instances of that, we need to report it.
Are these reports, I mean, how complex are they? I mean, obviously, if say one of our staff people could see right away that there's an issue with the numbers or whatever, I mean, they have to know they're reporting it, you know, that there's gonna be recapture fees or whatever those terms.
Sure.
It's not something that a professional would have to take a look at to make sure that is a basic form. Is it that basic?
Yeah, the ST-60s and 340. So I'll ask you to talk to that, but so far it's been something staff has managed.
Okay.
So Dean, to answer your question, the ST-340, which is an annual reporting requirement to the state, it is a state mandated form. The state creates it. The applicant or the project developer fills it out, identifying the amount of sales tax that they use that year. They file it with the state. We get a copy of it. So it is what it is. I hate to say it that way, but it is basic. It is affirmed by the signatory to that. And if the state, for some reason, wanted to audit them and, you know, determine that they lied, the state could do that. But it is just a way for us to check what did they report to the state versus what did we authorize.
I want to make sure that they don't say that somebody else is looking at these things and they come back and say there was an issue that we maybe missed somewhere along the line.
Yep.
But
The next piece here, just at the top of, I don't have these numbered, but it's top of page 4 here. It talks about it at the time of any non-compliance event, like the ones above that could trigger it, that the IDA will take into consideration the following, A through F there. A, did the company proceed in good faith? B, did they not perform because of economic issues, changes in market conditions, or adverse events beyond their control? COVID being perfect. C, we have to also consider, or should consider, if recapturing, suspending, discontinuing, if it would cause an adverse situation for the company, such as would it cause them to go out of business. D is, would us doing so cause an adverse situation for the residents? Would it somehow, an example we use is, say it's a grocery store, typically retail, so not the best example, but would we be putting a grocery store out of business in the middle of the food desert, like somewhere like the city of Newburgh, something like that. So those are things that we take into account. E is it in accordance with the annual assessment policy we talked about? And then F is just any other criteria, that is relevant. So that's what those are about. And then it, kind of spells out how this comes into play below that, and then recapture period. It spells out, let's see here, the recapture period will be longer of the term of the lease agreement, let's say it's a 15-year pilot, or 5 years following the project's completion date. So whichever is longer is really when that's our period when we could recapture based upon any of those factors that were. It's pretty much that simple. Sue, please, if there's anything I didn't point out you feel we should, or anything else you want to comment on this before the board does.
Nope, I just want to make sure the last part in terms of the recapture period, the reason it's drafted the way it is, the longer of either the lease agreement or 5 years from completion date, is because when you give only sales tax exemption, you don't give a pilot. The term of your lease is only the period of construction, so 18 months, 24 months, but the company's obligations to create those jobs and make those investments continue. And so if they don't do that, you want to be able to recapture for that period of time. So that's why it's crafted that way.
I had something I had called Bill on, because I had a couple of contractors call, and they were having issues getting paid by some of these. They had called it like, I do a contract, and they're like, isn't there something that if we don't get paid, there's something they're getting tax breaks, whatever? How does that, is there something that it can fit in there? I don't know if other IDAs have it. I don't know if there's anything to do with this or not, but, you know, whether if there ended up to be some sort of lien, maybe, you know, could that be taken into consideration?
Yes.
So we've had at least a couple examples this year, well, this past several months, where that's come up from past IDA projects, that there's complaints about them not, subs not being paid. So go ahead, please.
So the answer is yes. You don't see it in here. You see it in your lease documents. So your lease documents require that subs get paid. They cannot allow these liens to occur. So if someone were to notify you, as they have, I would recommend that you let Bill know. And then we can take action to send a letter to the company and say, we have been notified that you have not paid X, Y, and Z. Pursuant to section whatever of the lease, that is an event of default. Please cure within X period, you know, depending on the lease terms, within 30 days, 10 days, whatever it says. If they don't, then that triggers your ability to recapture, because that's an event of default under one of your documents.
And where is that then? Where was that?
In our closing documents.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
She's
I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole here, but I like to kind of play some things out and see where there could be loopholes. Is there potential for a situation where, you know, we're told that, hey, we're only the GC is responsible to us, and that the applicant paid the GC and they're paid up, but it's the GC or the construction management firm, whoever it might be, that hasn't paid the subs, but, you know, the applicant is off the hook as far as we're concerned. Is there any catch like that, or any sub GC or sub associated with the project, they have to be paid in a reasonable manner? That's all, you know, covered under our closing document.
Correct. They're all covered. You can't have liens on your project. You have to pay your contractors and your subs.
Do we have to wait for a threat of a lien to enforce this, or is it just someone saying it?
I think it is enough to inquire. I apologize. I only have one screen with me tonight, or I would pull up the lease language and read it to you. And I will get back to you on that. I believe it is sufficient if you are notified that someone is not being paid and you ask them, where's your invoice? Show me, demonstrate that you've properly billed this and that you actually are entitled. Then I think it is okay for the board to authorize Bill to reach out to the company and say, we've been notified of this. You have an obligation to pay these. Please advise, like, tell us. And so the company might come back and say, here's a canceled check. It went into his account, you know, 3 weeks ago. I don't know what he's doing. Or here's a wire. Or maybe they say, yeah, we're not paying him because he didn't do the job. But whatever it is, we have a right to know that. And if we find that the company is at fault and did not pay, then you can issue a default notice, and that can trigger under your recapture. Well, assuming you adopt this recapture policy, and I think even under the one you have, a failure to, a material non-compliance with any of your transactional documents, even under your existing policy, triggers your right to recapture if you want.
I would just ask for Bill or staff to come up with what you need in order to bring it to the board. You know, so you know, like council said,
On this issue, sir?
just on this, like a bill, you know, maybe it's a letter from, or an email from the company that's addressed stating the specifics. Then you go to the company and get the, you know, we should have the right information, so it's just not willy-nilly brought to the board. It's brought to the board when you have all the information. So whatever, I don't want to call it a checklist again, but I use that term loosely, but something that, you know, you can tick off and say, okay, this, yes, I was provided with these documents, and it's the same anytime that has to be brought to us.
Sure.
And we would handle that in probably governance committee and then to the full board, I would think.
I was thinking something similar to that, because we've seen whether it's, you know, it has things where you sign off on certified payrolls. I mean, we have one that we use in our office, you know, they'll send it in, yes, all benefits are paid, et cetera. It's a form that covers it.
All right, so I think we went down a little bit of a side track on that,
Sorry
but,
about that.
no, but that's, it's right along with some of this, and it directly talks. So in this instance, the recapture policy, one, it's written one way, and it's in our UTEP. This next pages are it's taking out of UTEP and going to be a standalone document,
Correct.
and it's rewritten. It's
Correct.
not just verbatim, it is
Absolutely.
taken out, removed, and this one will be new. And I don't see any issues with it. I think it's got a lot of teeth to it, and I think it should be supported by the full board. So I'll be voting in favor to bring it to the full board. Any other questions or comments from board members on this recapture policy, the current one, and then changing it over to the rewritten one and pulling it off as a standalone policy?
I was looking at item 3, B and C. A little bit, when I looked at that earlier, in terms of say the company upon completion of the project. What is that? What is that? Maintain at least 85% of this employment requirement for job creation and so on. Yeah, that I was a little bit concerned with that, but then following page I see here in terms of evaluation, we have to take into consideration the fluctuations, in the business and economy, and because they are dealing with variables beyond their control.
Yeah.
But that will take care of that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
will be taken care of.
as you can imagine, what happens like in places that have, I'll say, more natural disasters than we do,
Yeah.
like places that are ravaged by a hurricane.
Yeah.
You know, if all the infrastructure's gone, they're closed for 2 years, you're not going to recapture because it's not their fault, you know. So there's all these we don't see that in the north as much, maybe with a snowstorm here or there, like Buffalo is down, but not for a year. But you could see like Katrina or Superstorm Sandy, where whole sections of land have, been affected, and I'm sure all those businesses probably had issues like that.
That just,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
are free to change that number. Like if you're not comfortable with 85% being the trigger to look at it, you could make it 90, you could make it 87, you could, I just want you to know that part of it is what number I arrived at in conjunction with other clients I have. It is not required in the law. It is what you are comfortable with.
A little bit, because you don't want it to be such a, say, we incentivize a company that has 10 employees, all right? Well, if you say it's 90, that means they need to have, or say it's like 90, they need to have 9.
Exactly.
Or 85, they can have 8, or 9, so it doesn't, you have to take, it's not always the big companies, it's also the small ones, so.
That's a really good point. But I also think I'm comfortable with it because
It gives us a
of
very,
what Dr. Odock said, that you do have in the back.
with that, any other comments? With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the updated recapture policy and present it to the full board for consideration at our next board meeting. Rodak, second?
Second.
Dean, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carried unanimously with 3. And then the second part of this is the project approval policy.
Right, so.
So I'm gonna.
Yeah, so I apologize because Bill and I have not had a chance to go through your project approval policy and come up with any proposed changes we might want to. So what I'm asking really for the committee to consider is just authorizing us to pull it out and post it separately as a separate document. And then Bill and I will get to it and bring it back to you if there are any proposed changes we think are warranted. But because we have to give the taxing jurisdictions notice of any time we change anything in the UTEP, to me, it makes sense to send one notice and say, we're simply pulling out these policies and making them standalone. So it's one notice. Once we do that, we don't have to notify the taxing jurisdictions if we change any of these other policies. That rule only applies to your UTEP. So that was the only reason I wanted to raise it this evening.
Cool. So when you say we could notify the jurisdictions, is that every taxing jurisdiction? Or is
Yes.
that just municipal?
It's every taxing
Everyone?
jurisdiction, yes, that in Orange County that you would impact. So in this case, it would be everybody.
Okay, so, a homework assignment is we gotta figure out how we would do that. I don't think we've done that recently. But, you know, whether you work with the county or real property tax services or someone like that, they should have all the contacts and addresses and those type of things. Let's not recreate the wheel. Let's use whatever, you know, there should be something out there that has that. Let's keep that on file, because we could potentially be needing this whenever we change UTEP or any other type of notification. That's something that's a take home or a homework assignment.
Sure.
But yeah, so in this instance, while we don't have the policy in front of us, it's the policy that's embedded in the UTEP that we're just looking to take out standalone and repost separately. And like you said, if we're going to change it, you'll come back to us at a future governance meeting for that. I feel comfortable with that, and I think that makes it easier. And to do it in conjunction with this, so it's only one notification, obviously, make it a lot easier. So I don't think. Any questions on that, guys? That I entertain a motion to accept, remove the project approval policy from our UTEP, pull it out and post it separately, and bring that to the full board for consideration. I'll make that motion. Can we get a second? Rodock second. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimously. All right. 2 out of the 3 done. Let's go to fee structure. What are we doing with fee structure?
Okay, so fee structure is this graph you're looking at, this table, basically.
Yep.
What is it, 4 pages? Can't fit everything all together. So yeah, 4 pages, you'll see. Basically, this is something I had asked 2 teams to work on, looking at our fee structure as well as really looking at competition. Certainly, we have competition all over the state, outside the state, et cetera, but generally thinking about this in terms of our region, what are our regional competitors, co-opetition, if you want to call it that, you know, what are they actually charging? And there's basically, you know, 5 or 6 categories of fees. First, the application fee. We're all familiar with our $2,500. You see that that is actually higher than all of the others, even though after discussing at length, Sue and I really don't think that it's too high. One suggestion that we would make is that right now the $2,500 fee, it's split between us and our counsel, either our general counsel on our bond counsel if it's a bond deal, our general counsel if it's everyone anything else. Right now, as you've seen on the financials, we collect that and then we pass it through, which adds, you know, a couple of line items to our financials. Sue had suggested, and I absolutely agree, we could have the applicant send us $1,250 to us and $1,250 directly to our counsel, and just leave that part out of the pass through out of our finances. Just a simple change, not changing the fee amount, but instructing our applicants to send 2 checks separately to us and to the council.
I would ask whoever's doing our audit what their opinion is on it.
Okay.
Right? I mean, what do we need to account for it, or do we not need to account for it? I'm for simplifying it. If it's not our money, then, you know, it would overestimate our revenue and then overestimate our expenses, even though it would be a pass-through. So I don't know. I mean, let's get some guidance on that, council guidance and CPA guidance on what's the proper thing to do and what others do. And let's make a recommendation to the board. I think that's something that's simple enough, and we can push that through finance if we want.
And Bill, can I just make 2 small corrections? So one, you're not splitting your $2,500 fee with us. You're getting $2,500 and we're getting $2,500.
5,000 and 2,500 each, exactly. Thank you.
Yes,
So it's really an
and
application.
right,
Correct.
and your fee is equivalent to Ulster County. They just split theirs and call it something different. They have $1,000 plus $1,500 to cover the public hearing costs. So theirs is a total of $2,500 as well. So anyway, just to your point, I don't think your fee is too high, but I wanted you to understand that Ulster County is the same.
And I'll editorialize just a couple of things here. One is that I have been involved in a number, just in the last year again, a number of multiple conversations on would-be applicants, would-be applicants, this, that, and the other. Just seeing how they tend to go. and how much work our council puts into it, as well as staff, I don't think it's a ridiculous number. We're talking many hours. Some projects take much longer for us to help massage and get things to the right place. So that's that's one piece. And I'll also say that both in my role in the IDA and in my time as an economic developer, before this with Orange County, I've never heard a complaint about that. I have heard about other fees that they've complained about, but never about that. So that's just my 2 cents. Second column is annual admin fee. That's something we do not charge right now, but something else just from my 20 months of experience here, I definitely advocate for. There's work that's done every single year for every project that is active, whether it's preparation for Paris reporting, audits, any of that. Calls we get with questions, concerns, small little administrative work we need to do. As you see, most other IDAs charge something for that. Sue and I talked about an amount of, say, $1,000 annually that will be charged, and that would cover us for all the costs that pop up for, again, managing records for reporting, everything tied to each project. That is a nominal amount that. Do you concur there?
I do. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I absolutely do. You have to review ST60s when they come in. Your staff has to review end of the year, the 340 that they file with the state. You have to compare that to the amount of sales tax that they were awarded. There's a lot that goes into administering projects on an annual basis. And I believe almost all IDAs charge some kind of annual fee.
That would be for the life of the.
As long as it's an active project,
Correct.
Meaning if it's a 15-year pilot until that's completed, correct. Okay, so that's that piece. I don't know how you want to do it, Mr. Chairman, if you want to stop on each one and discuss.
Well, yeah, I mean, are we looking at how it's written on our website and disclosed, or is this just a spreadsheet that you guys put together, or is it both?
So that the top orange
Yeah.
with us, that's absolutely the way it is. And it's,
Okay.
is it on our website? Yeah, it's on a fee schedule document posted on the application page of our website. So that's all accurate. Nothing's been changed. It's not proposed or anything. That's accurate.
So is it 2,500 or 5,000? So do we need to make that change?
Yeah, I'm
No, because
debating.
under your application fee, it's 2,500. If you move over 3 columns, you'll see legal fees. And there it says $2,500 retainer. Plus at closing, you pay an additional fee, which covers everything else that council does. We'll get to talk about that. My recommendation is that part gets changed, but when we get there, we can talk about it. So anyway, at the time they file, they pay both the application fee and the $2,500 retainer.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Looking to the right and left.
Right.
All right. Yeah, so let's go column by column.
Okay, so yeah, second is the admin fee, which is, it's kind of a nominal figure that isn't, probably take the most debate, but still up for discussion, no question. The fourth column here in the graph here is agency administrative closing fees, due at closing. This is the big piece. This is what, is hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes millions for the right project, in fees that go to the IDA. And this is something, there's a couple components. This is a little more complicated, I'll say, because you see ours. And if you look at Dutchess County, are they at the end here? The last page? It's a little closer at the end, right? Yeah, Dutchess is the second page. Theirs is similar to ours in that, at least the component about sectors. What is the industry sector? They and we align our fee schedule for the closing fees in line with our UTEP, basically. What types of sectors are we trying to draw here? I'm gonna, you guys are gonna obviously get sick of me talking about advanced manufacturing and tech. Those are the types of sectors I want to make sure that we're prioritizing and focusing, and continue to keep manufacturing as a priority. I would like to see us, or at least would like you to consider a revised structure that does the same thing, though, that it actually provides more attractive rates or fees for the types of projects that bring the type of jobs and the type of, are in the type of industry sector that we want to attract. But in our planning for this, Susan, mine, of course, we recognize that we are going to most likely revise our UTEP and maybe reprioritize what are the sectors we want to. Sue was suggesting that we do that work before we change this component of the pricing, of the fees, where, you know, we could keep these sectors and change the numbers, but that may not necessarily be in line with what we decide as a group we want to have in our UTEP. You know, what is our priority sectors that we want to attract?
And we're not talking changing UTEP tonight.
No, that's more, frankly, trying to do some lower hanging fruit in the beginning. So no, that's something, it's a larger project if you ask me, and that's
probably a standalone meeting.
Exactly,
You know,
exactly. I'd like to focus just on UTEP when we get there. There's that piece. So that's one piece, is the sector-oriented pricing. Now, in those same part of the fees, where in ours, manufacturing sector, distribution, warehouse sector, retail sector, all of that, I'm saying we wait on on changing those sectors or whatever it is. But, and I'm not saying we necessarily change the fees that follow that. However, you should at this time look at those fees. For example, manufacturing sector, and this is our most attractive fee because we're trying to attract manufacturers. 1% of the first $2 million of the project, then 0.5% of the remainder of the project budget. So that's a savings, because when you get past the first $2 million, then it's only 0.5%. Whereas distribution, it's 1% of the whole project cost. So that's a higher fee. Those fees, I don't think it's too soon to look at those and compare them with, let's say, Duchess on the next page, where for manufacturing, distribution, and tech, it's all lumped together. It's 1% of the first $2.5 million, then 0.25% of 1% for everything in excess of that. So those are lower fees. I think you're seeing, regardless of the sectors, that some of the other IDAs, they're charging less for this section here. So that's one thing I want you to look at, is that we do seem to be, you know, higher than a lot of these other. And then outside of the sector piece, other thing I'd like you to look for in this column is that, and something, Mr. Chairman, you and I've talked about several times, I'll look at Dutchess County again, and they're all good friends, everyone on here, but Dutchess certainly as well. Again, friendly co-opetition, we're competing for projects, no question. In the fourth column under Dutchess on page 2, you'll see that they have a fee schedule for closing fees on projects that do not involve a pilot. See the first line there, MRT, mortgage recording tax exemption, and sales tax exemption. I'm under Dutchess County.
MRTE and
SDE. We don't have that. We charge this large rate, frankly, you know, pretty hefty rate, even if someone comes to us like Walgreens did, just for sales tax exemption. And you're talking typically a difference of benefits in the millions if they apply for a benefit or pilot or not. And we charge the same hefty. So I would strongly ask you to consider something like what they've done, where a fee for just if they apply for sales tax exemption and mortgage recording tax exemption, of like what they've done, a nominal amount like $5,000. I actually like that, $5,000 plus 1% of the benefit amount. So if they're getting a benefit of $2 million in sales tax exemption, mortgage recording tax exemption, then it's 2% of that. You know, again, $200,000 in that case. So it's more in line with the benefits that they are receiving. I think that's something that, because again, Mr. Chairman, our conversations have always typically been in the context of, let's make sure we're competitive out there. Let's make sure our rates are fair, that we're recouping, you know, what we should, but that we're not pricing ourselves out of you know, if people are, a company is maybe IDA shopping, fee shopping in that regard. That's been a fear of, you know, many people.
Would that also help smaller businesses to get incentivized?
If we have a fee structure based upon percentage of the benefits, yes, because they're going to get a much smaller benefit. Of course, they also have typically a smaller project budget size. So, you know,
it's relative,
fees based upon that, you know, you also obviously make much lower, let's say savings, but a lower fee if it's small.
The one thing I'll ask is, when we revise this or look at it, when we're going over it, can we put what the pilot terms are? Just because it's a good comparison to know that, not for everybody, at least just for us, that, you know, is distribution warehousing a maximum pilot of, I don't remember,
Distribution was lowered when they last
Yeah.
provided use up to 6 years.
the 6 years.
Manufacturing, they kept it 15 years, which of course we've been
15,
criticized for, but that's how it's defended is.
Yeah.
The last idea kept it there because we prioritize manufacturing. And just because it's not Amy's Kitchen at 691 promised jobs, doesn't mean we don't offer a 15-year pilot to Milmar Food looking to
Yeah.
expand and add 50 jobs. So it's all relative.
And the same thing with the hotel. The hotels went from 10 down to 4, right?
Correct. And to be
Just
frank,
pick- I don't know, just put them in brackets like max pilot equals,
sure, okay.
something like, just so we're, because that should be looked at as well when we're talking about UTEP, not
That's
today.
absolutely what
Yeah.
we'll look at
Yeah.
under the UTEP. Because there are schedules at the end of our UTEP that say a 6-year pilot, which again is for distribution, it spells out year 1, 95% abatement, year 2,
Yeah, yeah.
90%. It's really spelled out. So yeah, I'll definitely share those.
Because one of the things that one of the things that I'm worrying about is that we're potentially not competitive in certain industries. It might be because of site location. I don't think so, because our sites are usually predominantly great compared to everybody else's. But it could be cost, like land acquisition cost. You would figure a construction project in one part of the region is going to be the same as another. But I do worry that we haven't seen hotels come in front of us. And riding around, you don't see too many hotels. Yeah, you saw some go up a couple of years ago, still deficient, and there's, for some reason, they're in limbo.
Yeah.
You know, and some have approvals, but they haven't, moved forward. So
Great.
I do worry about that. So these are the things that we should talk in the broader tense, but we'll talk about that when we go over UTEP. But those are things too. Those are the maximum.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Dean. I'm sorry.
Well, this way, the only thing I was gonna add is like, would it matter to even looking at the fee schedule to find out what the pilots are even for the others, like a Dutchess County or with the other counties? If that would continue or not?
Compare how aggressive their actual
Matter?
pilots are to that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Because if they were longer, it may, I know that's a different discussion, but.
And I think
Just
that
trying to
will
kind of prompt-
happen. Right, I think we will do that when we come back to you on the UTEP itself. Like when we look at your schedules and your industries, we will also do an analysis of your biggest competitors. So that we can, I'm assuming, tell you, okay, Dutchess County, they don't have a special hotel pilot where they only give them 4 years or 6 years. They treat those as commercial projects and they get a 10-year pilot. And so I have no idea, but maybe you see Dutchess County having more hotels because financially, when they run the numbers to pay the IDA fee, it doesn't pay them to do it to get a 6-year pilot, but it pays them to get a 10-year pilot. So I think, I don't want to speak for Bill, but in my mind, when we come back to you on the UTEP categories and the schedules, it will tie to this, but it will also involve an analysis of your neighbors.
And I'm trying to process what you're suggesting, Dean, with how it affects how it backs into the fee piece, you know what I mean? If it's, and I'm just trying to, how that plays in,
When Mike
and how it doesn't.
discussed it.
So that's the, and just, I guess the last component of that, I mentioned the mortgage recording tax and sales tax exemption only, if they're applying for that only, that there should be, I think, a more competitive fee. And then I think on bond deals, right now, everything is still our typical, whatever the sector is, it's that amount. I think bond deals, we should consider a different fee structure. I think it was, Dutchess also has something that I think we should consider, like it's just a little lower. It's 1% of the first $2.5 million. And then 0.25% for the remainder of the budget. Just something that I think fits a little bit more with that, as opposed to if somebody's getting all the benefits, including the pilot.
So a question for council. If we do change our fee structure or our fee schedule and our UTEP, it's only on projects after we change it, right? Projects that have already filled that and stuff, we're probably bound to keep what we've promised or, what we've showed them in the past, correct?
So to the extent you have any project that has I know you don't like this term, but closed and is operating under lease documents, it doesn't affect them at all. To the extent you have projects that you have approved but have not closed, I would say you get to choose. Do you want to go back and revisit those? I think that would be a challenge for you. So I would say those are going to stay the way they are. And you can make it effective going forward. But if you have projects, like if you have a project, and I can't think of one right now that was approved, but is waffling, right? Something has happened in the market since we approved it and it's waffling, and it would benefit from whatever you decide your new UTEP schedule is. You can effectively say, you can come back and we'll apply this one. We'll hold a new public hearing and we'll approve an amended schedule. So that is a policy decision for you to make, not really a legal question for me.
Okay, makes sense. So I know we're going to continue on through and look at more of this stuff, but is there anything that we're looking to do tonight on the fee schedule?
Well, I frankly want to see how far we'd get. If we could discuss this and we land on things and we could make a recommendation, we have kind of a revised schedule we could recommend to the board on the 18th of this month, that would be great. But I want to get it right. Yeah, I really do. Okay. I knew this would be the first chance to kind of pour over it, and there's some intricacies to this, obviously, and some nuance to it. So I don't want to rush it, but and the last thing I wanted to add back to Sue's last comment in your question, Mr. Chairman, is I had also asked Sue if we're looking to amend these fees, and let's say it takes 4 months. What we have, for example, as I brought up before, an applicant that only is looking for sales tax exemption. And could we, in the interim, decide as a board to actually give them a different fee that's based upon that, maybe the direction we're going to, but they haven't yet approved? And she said we can do that.
Okay.
So if that comes up, and we're still, so we don't have to rush because, hey, we don't think this fits. Because if we had a project where especially if it's a direction we're going, you could discuss it and apply this fees, levied fees. Correct, Sue?
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, I think we should do that. We should have a separate fee. I think.
On which piece? On the
RT,
right,
recording time.
When there's no pilot fee.
Correct.
Yeah.
Have that category, I think.
Right.
Do we need to distinguish between no pilot or if they go and get a 485B, then they don't go through us? That's a benefit.
It is.
But it's not from us, but it's at, I want to say, I say as of right, probably too loosely.
Absolutely. I do too.
But we've seen that a couple places.
Yes.
I don't know if we want to. I don't know if we want to be that specific, because if it's not involving us, it's not involving us.
But objectively, it is a factor.
It is a factor. It is a benefit.
It is.
It's more of a local benefit.
And it goes into the equation. This is all a math equation, right? It's all a financial problem.
Yeah.
And it does factor in. Sue, do you have any thoughts on that, or have you seen that addressed anywhere?
Not, you're just talking about a 485?
Yes.
Yeah, because like they're not getting charged a fee from the town for that.
Right.
The only way that he's charged is it comes through an IDA.
Right. But I think it gets back to the realities of what makes it feasible for an applicant. So if they're getting a 485, they're not getting a pilot from you. So the benefits they're getting, even though the project size is the same, it's the same $10 million project, but the value of the benefits they're getting is just sales tax and mortgage recording tax. That's far less than if they were to add in a pilot. So in my opinion, charging a fee based on just mortgage recording tax and sales and use tax makes sense to me and makes it competitive and seems reasonable, because the 485 is as of right. If they want, anybody can get that, whether they come to the IDA or not. But it's about, really, your fee should be a trade-off for the benefits they're getting, right?
Yeah. Obviously, Bill, if we change any of this in the future, we have to account for that in all of our calculations. But we'll worry about that when we have to worry. All right. Anything else? Want to go over anything else in this? There?
You have a question, Dr. Aldo?
No, I said so far, it's a good comparative analysis.
Yeah.
And the next column is legal fees charged. Ours, and I'm gonna go as far as to say, I mentioned before I came to the IDA, I would hear from applicants, some were, not, few would complain, I think, because they're happy to get the benefits, but if I heard any complaints about IDA fees, it was about the legal fees. And I'm not indicting anyone specifically, but it was what I heard, and if you see here and compare it to the others, right now it's a third, the legal fees are a third of the IDA fees. So if we have legal fees of $1 million, or I'm sorry, fees, IDA fees, closing fees of $1 million, then that's $333,000 for in legal fees. And frankly, just in asking Sue, straight up, what's reasonable, what's not in terms of fees, and talking about all sorts of levels of projects and such. Soon I'll let her affirm it, but Sue made it clear that she thinks that her firm will come in typically for typical projects between $30,000 and $40,000 for legal fees. Period, almost every time. So I'll let you.
So then who keeps the difference?
Well, that's it. The way this works is this is a flat fee. Understand that. So the way this is drafted, if I were to implement this, so in West Warwick, I don't even remember what that project cost was, I would have charged them a third. They would have just gotten an invoice that said, for my services to the IDA, you owe me X. It would have had no relationship to the amount of time it took me to do the deal. I did not do that. I did not follow your fee schedule. I did not charge a percentage of your fee. I charged a fee based upon hours in. So that I'm not telling you there aren't deals that are more complex than others, but the bottom line for IDA transactions, your documents are pretty much the same. Yes, there are things I change depending on a project, but the documents themselves are basically form documents that I've created, that every IDA council creates. So whether the project is $10 million or $1 million, it's the same set of documents.
Almost the same set of time. I mean, it's just because it's more value, but take this offline.
Okay.
I have some questions that probably we need to talk about offline.
You can go into executive session now, or we can talk about it anytime you want. You can call me, but.
Yeah, we may need to do that sometime. I'm not prepared yet, but this just put some lights in the back of my head.
Okay.
A couple of things. Okay. Yeah. But that's something that we want to make sure that we're competitive with, but that we're also not unreasonable to the applicant. And want to make sure that there's, I'd like to know how this affected our revenues in the past. One term. Yeah. But we'll talk about that offline or in executive session or whatever. We'll have you do some homework. Obviously, you're not going to have it on the fingertips. Right. And if we have to go to executive session at this meeting or another meeting, we can do that. But, all right. So
continue on. That's that piece. The second to last column is miscellaneous fees. We don't have an EUC, but there are a couple examples of it. Newburgh, Port Jervis, and Ulster County. And I frankly, I haven't been through all of these transactions, so or have a sense of how often they come up. So I don't have a personal feeling as to what should we need to add. But there are a number that I could see based on my experience so far that are reasonable. Like City of Newburgh, number 7 has a termination fee. We came up with our own amount when Hampton Park, terminated, but there definitely should be a fee for that. Whether or not we set it or we say it's, to our discretion, that's one thing. Well, if that's an example of something, terminate, you terminate. I feel like it could be a set amount. That's one there. And then there are other more kind of specific ones. Refunding of bonds. Now this is City of Port Jervis on the second page. New additional financing in an existing project. I don't know. Again, I don't have the experience to know how common these are that we need to have these laid out.
They may be new application fees. They may be new council fees because it's something almost like a new I don't know if we need to go into such specifics.
And then also on Newburgh, first page, bottom of the first page, there's number 5 under this column, refinancing bonds. We have that. That's what the bond deal that came with is Mount St. Mary. So, obviously that's an example now since our experience, we know that happens. That be less of a fee than, you know,
Then
a new.
Initial issue?
Exactly. So those are things that I'm just frank that I don't have the experience where I want to give you a strong, you know, opinion on that. Sue, I certainly asked her to weigh in, but it's a kind of a miscellaneous subject actually, because you see it's all over the board.
And then does bond counsel fees, where does that fit into this? Is that a different column or is that?
Bond counsel fees is really for the bond counsel themselves, Chris Canada in this case. It's the column before this, the legal fees. That's what we're talking. So we'll address that in that.
And it doesn't matter which organization, whether it's IDA or OCFC.
This is for both. This is really
yeah,
exactly. This is kind of a global, you know, charge for both sides of the house. And any other bond closing fees, Mr. Chairman, are really also in that 4th column, the one where you're talking about with sectors and things like that. That's where I'm suggesting that we actually have a specific bond fee where we don't right now. It's just grouped in with the sector and all that. So, but yeah, otherwise bond counsel is covered under legal fee. Sue, do you have any thoughts on the miscellaneous section here? Any
No,
that stand out? You think we stopped?
no. I mean, I think your miscellaneous is your labor monitoring policy, you know, what you charge for that. I think that that's fine. I mean, when I say I think it's fine, I think it's fine to charge for it. I haven't analyzed the parameters. You know, that you and I can discuss that, Bill, but I don't really think there's anything. Well, I should say this. What I would do in your fee schedule is include something for amendment of documents. So if someone comes back to amend documents because they need a longer period of time, or they come back because they're like, hey, as a result of supply chain issues, we need an increase in our sales tax amount. You would want to charge an additional percentage of new money. You would want to charge some basic admin fee if they came back to do an amendment where they weren't getting any additional benefits, but more time. It still requires your time and energy. It requires someone to sign documents, etc. So that's something you might want to include in there. If they come, we had a call, Bill and I had a call about a potential project, and they had indicated that they were going to self-fund part of the construction and then refinance. So that is it's not unheard of. Some applicants do that, but it's not your norm. Normally you would close on your lease transaction at the same time you close your mortgage financing. So it's all one amount of time, right? You're doing it all together. If they come back for a subsequent mortgage closing, maybe you want to charge a small fee for that, because again, you're not in the same room signing all those documents at one time. It's a whole, 6 months later, you got to do it all over again. So I can come up with a few of those instances, and I can share with Bill some ideas about what you might want to include in there. So, and some of them you see like in Newburgh, like they say extension of inducement. I think what they mean by that is your sales tax, right? If they come back and they want to refinance, you want to charge a percentage of that. If they're going to take new money, you're going to charge a percentage of that. So I can give Bill some ideas about some things I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah, and that last column is the local labor policy, monitoring, which you see we really have
I have a little bit of a question on this one, because does it really, do our fees, how do I say this? Are what we being charged by the consultants that we've hired, do we get covered for that, or do we get over covered for that? We get to keep it, and I don't understand why it goes up so high with larger projects when it's really the same type of thing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but our labor consultants are going to the job sites when we ask them to, or on a schedule. and making sure that at least 85% of the workers that show up have signed their paperwork, given ID, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's a glorified spreadsheet, right? You know, it's nothing like we're not looking about wages or prevailing, you know, this is just, are you from the area of our labor shed or not? And I'm just not sure why, you know, yeah, it's more entries in a Excel spreadsheet on bigger projects, but is it that much more time? You know,
My thinking was that it's more subs, it's more subcontracts, it's more workers, it's a larger scale project, you know, it goes on longer typically, you know, so those were kind of the assumptions that I was making as to why
it does go on longer, yeah. I just.
Why don't?
Here's the question. But
Why don't you tie it to, in your application, you specifically asked how many construction employees is this going to take, right? How many construction workers or jobs are you going to create? So certainly the larger the number of construction jobs, the longer it's going to take to do the verification. It really doesn't, I mean, I guess in theory it has to do with the project cost, but in some ways it has nothing to do with the project cost. So maybe you tie it to the number of construction jobs created and the duration of the construction period.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Sue, because I don't know if it's based upon size. No, I mean, you know, I use this stupid example, like you could build something out of gold and it's going to cost you $100 million, but it might only be 10,000 square feet. You know, I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to better understand the whole labor policy costs and you know, are we, I'm sure we're tracking it, but we should literally have a little spreadsheet going on each project, knowing that we're charging X, it's costing us Y, and there's a difference there. And sometimes we're going to charge more than what is cost. Other times it's going to cost more than what we charge,
right,
depending on length of time.
Well, we should know.
We should know, and you guys should be tracking that on a project-by-project basis.
and we are actually. And I can tell you again from experience just of the last 20 months that there are plenty of projects where they run out of the initial funds and then we have to build them for, I think you've seen that, we have to build them for the remainder. And to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, this is an estimate that we use and we collect these fees and they go into escrow. When the project's done, if there's a remainder there, they get the money right back. And if there's, again, as I mentioned a minute ago, if there's further monitoring in excess of what we collected under this fee, then we charge them for that, the applicant. We're covered on that all around. And again, if there's any, if they paid anything in excess of what was
so they're paying us, and then we're paying the consultant.
Exactly. It's another in and out, inflow and outflow like that. But again, we refund them for anything that was not used. So it's
okay.
There's no extra payment on either side by the client or by us.
Understood.
In the past, I will say, old projects, the applicant did not pay the local labor monitoring, but that they cover all of those. But we reimburse them for any unused.
Well, then if that is the case, then maybe the fee structure, but it's an incentive, I would think, for some of them to make sure they have the paperwork ready to go.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because
lagging on the paperwork. Yeah.
If we're waiting, I listen.
If you're waiting there 4 hours for them to make photocopies,
or if they don't have it, come back.
Yeah.
Back.
Yeah.
Come back.
Yeah.
Then so I mean that makes. But you can still debate the schedule, but.
The other extreme, I mean, I think we have two great consultants right now, but what happens sometime in the future, you have a consultant that all of a sudden is, all right, we want $400 an hour to do this. And all of a sudden, it's starting to cost us, ridiculous sums of money.
That's when we go back out to RFP, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Sure, if we see that.
Yeah. But, those are all things that, there's variables out there that you don't want to consider, but absolutely it has to be. Look at that, and I like what Sue said, maybe by duration and by number.
Yeah. So that's the analysis. That's the comparative. We've talked about a lot of them. I would like to ask you, just high level, how you want to proceed with this. If you want to have a full discussion at the board level, if you want to talk about this further at a subsequent governance committee meeting, which we have one in February, by the way, as together. or what, or more homework, and then again, the.
Well, this was shared with everybody, correct? Or just the
Yes,
committee?
it was.
It was shared with everybody.
I share most committee
Yeah,
documents
yeah.
with everyone, it's all.
So, maybe a little synopsis to everybody, have them review it, give any other further ideas to you. It's already a standalone document, or it's in our application, yes, so it's not, we don't have to worry about pulling it out of UTEP or.
No.
Or anything like that.
No.
It does, there is specifics in the UTEP that talk about this.
Absolutely. And that's the only component we're talking about waiting on, is if you're okay with the structure where it's based upon sectors, there's different rates, then that's the only piece we probably wouldn't change, because the UTEP would drive what those sectors are. You may say, hotel's not even gonna be listed here, it's gonna be, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, and then everything else, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And when we do that, Sue, we have to notify the taxing jurisdiction.
Correct.
Right. Well, we're not ready to do that today. We're not ready to bring it to the board in 2 weeks. So I think what we have to do is potentially talk about what they look like. What's the recommendation? Like, I think we've got some information here. I think we need to maybe have some conversations with some board members, and you guys come up, and we come up with a recommendation. I'll work with you on that,
okay.
on what we want it to look like. And then from there, we can vote on it, but I don't know if we're ready to make that recommendation to the full board tonight, because I don't think we're there yet.
No.
Okay, so let's plan on making that a priority for our February governance.
Okay.
But have something that we can come concrete with, saying, this is what it is. Well, we can have this, comparing it to others, but let's say, this is what ours is now, this is what we think we want it to be.
Absolutely. And I'll
Then
have conversations with each board member.
Yeah.
to get feedback.
See if they have any differences or anything, that's out there. I will ask, do we have any limitations? So Sue, do we have any limitations when we're talking about fees or length of pilots or anything like that in our UTEP? Do we have anything that is, that we're bound by? And if we don't have the answer today, we can give that to Bill, so we make sure that we don't recommend something that's not allowed or it's in excess of what we're allowed to do. Like, are we allowed to do a 20 pilot?
Yes. Yes, you're allowed to do a 20. No, you do not have limits. What your limits are is you have to publish what your proposed changes are and circulate them to your taxing jurisdictions and hold a public hearing. But you can do pretty much anything you want to do. But I just want to point something out, which it may be that I'm just reading it all too quickly, but in your fee schedule, you have hotel sector, and then it says 10-year pilot. But in your UTEP, on Schedule D, it says 4-year schedule for qualifying hotel projects. So maybe there's another hotel sector that I'm not seeing quickly in the UTEP, but off the bat, something doesn't match in your fee schedule to what your UTEP says for those sectors.
I noticed that as well, and that's one of my questions. I think we have some cleanup to do as well. Apparently.
Well, it's in red. I don't know why it's right.
I think they changed the UTEP to de-incentivize hotels,
Right.
for some reason,
It didn't change the fee schedule.
and they didn't change the fee schedule, previous to us.
Right. So, I mean,
Let's-
one thing, I don't know that this gets you anywhere, but I'll throw it out there. It's going to take us longer to look at the UTEP schedule sectors, like that's a bigger project. If you want to temporarily clean up your fee schedule, you could propose to the board as a temporary measure to change your fee schedule just for now to just be 1% of the project costs if someone's getting all 3 benefits. If someone's just getting mortgage recording tax and sales and use tax, you could make a recommendation that it be $5,000 and 1% of the benefit amount. And then say to the board, we're going to do this as an interim step. Once we revise the UTEP, we will revisit the fee schedule to see if you want to make additional changes or somehow tie it to schedules in the UTEP. Just an idea.
I'd rather change it once. think we can get this done next month. I think that we can get the cleanup, the revisions through governance and to the board by February.
Yeah, I'm glad you felt that way, because that's what I'd like.
Yeah.
to do. We do our end.
I think we can do that, as long as we commit to a governance meeting, which we committed to for February, and we can get, yeah,
We can get all the homework done, absolutely. And again, worst case, if it does drag on, we have the opportunity where if a project came and we were concerned about the fees not matching, especially, in line with where we're going, you could make a decision on a case by case basis.
the only
So
thing,
not
the only part that's gonna stink is that municipalities will get noticed twice instead of once. They're gonna get noticed once about the recapture and project approval policy. And they'll get re-noticed again, but
I've definitely, we talked about that, thought the same thing, but, it's
it is what it is.
It's
Yeah.
not the worst thing.
not
We're
the worst
getting
thing
more
at all, yeah.
communication from us, we're being updated all the time on it.
Yeah.
It's just the way we're doing it. I
Now-
don't want to streamline everything we're doing and,
Yeah.
and be efficient, but some things just are going to play out.
So Sue, I think I heard you correctly. You said that we would need to do a public hearing when we change UTEP, but not when we change the recapture or the approval coming out of UTEP. Or do we need to do a public hearing as well?
So because they are currently in your UTEP, any change to your UTEP requires notice and public hearing. So you would have to hold a public hearing. No one would show up because nobody cares, because you're not substantively changing the pilots. You're just administratively taking something out of it and making it a standalone document. No one cares about that. But if what I'm hearing you say is that you believe that by February, you can have the UTEP done as well, in terms of the actual meat of the UTEP, is that what I heard you say? No?
No, schedule is what I think we could tackle. I don't think we could address UTEP and have debates about what sectors should be priorities. I don't think we could do that and this all by February. I don't. I'd like to see us spend a little more time on that piece. So I don't want to rush that, frankly. That's the part I'm concerned about. All of this, all the homework we need to do, I think we can have discussions with each board member about it. On the fee schedule, no problem. We'd be ready for next February's governance committee meeting and then on your approval and recommendation for the full board. I do UTEP, I misunderstood if that's what you meant, complete revamp the UTEP. I don't know if we could do all that. And we have applications coming in,
The only thing I'm worried about is that we're gonna be notifying the municipalities and then doing a public hearing, then notifying municipalities, doing a public hearing. I'd like to do it all at once if possible.
Right.
I mean, one of the things I was thinking of is that while we're bringing this to a recommendation from our previous agenda item about the recapture and the approval policy, we can bring that to the board, get it approved, but we can hold that in escrow to do the fee schedule, so we're doing everything and notifying them all at once. February.
what do you think, Sue?
Yeah,
Does
so,
that require you?
so I think we just need, first of all, I'm fine if you want to not move forward with actually amending the UTEP to pull things out until you are ready to amend the actual UTEP, the substance of it. Because you're right, notifying jurisdictions twice puts them on high alert, they get nervous, and you have to hold 2 public hearings. So you know what? No one has questioned you yet. The ABO hasn't come and said, we want them to be standalone. We alert people to what they are. Yes, we're going to eventually make some changes to the recapture policy to be the things we talked about tonight, but your recapture policy is not killing you right now. So putting a pin in all of it and just waiting until you're ready to do the UTEP as a whole, I can get comfortable with that. I just want us to be careful that we're not conflating changing the fee schedule with changing the UTEP. Changing your fee schedule, you can do any day of the week, all day long, without notifying anybody. But changing those actual UTEP schedules and the sectors and how that's going to work, that requires notice and a public hearing. So maybe what we do is Bill and I work on getting recommendations to you, this committee, for February and March with respect to the UTEP, and tie the fee schedule into that. It will all make more sense then, because we'll be able to present to you a unified picture and then proceed.
So to understand this a little bit easier or a little bit better, the fees that we would charge applicants are one thing, but the tax exemption policy calculations that affect taxing jurisdictions are UTEP policy and is a different thing, right? So like if we wanted, application fees or legal counsel fees, stuff that's affecting our applicants, we could do any day of the week, just do it and be done with it. It's stuff that affects any taxing jurisdiction is something that's more intricate.
That is correct.
Okay, so with that, I think we have two things on this. We have two tracks. One is fees, the other one is UTEP.
Yeah.
Okay, so recommendation on fees, I think we've had a good initial discussion with this. Do we want to change an application fee? Do we want to do an annual fee? Do we want to change our legal fees? Let's come up with what our recommendations are for that for this committee to look at. So let's have that ready by February. So if we want to change that, we can do that.
Yes.
Okay. And then that also includes labor policy, the calculations or how we want to change wording and stuff like that. Simultaneously, let's start prepping the UTEP revisions on what we want to potentially do. Working with council, I'll work with you on, how we want to maybe devise up a draft, but how we want, what we want to take out, what we want to add. I really like the fact of the mortgage recording and sales tax exemption, standalone, smaller fee type of thing. I really like that. Let's come up with some of that so we can talk about it maybe at the next governance. But more importantly, you'll have more time and potentially we'll bring it to February or March. Not going to say we're going to commit to bringing it to February, but if we have any fees that we want to, we should be able to do that by February.
Yeah.
Unless we want to do something tonight. I mean,
I think we've had plenty of discussion. We're an hour and a half in. This is where I was hoping to end, quite frankly. And I've got some homework as a result of this. And I want to put it together, and then I want to kind of, meditate on it a little bit, make sure it's exactly what I want to put forward. Cool. February's perfect for that.
So we've already made the resolution or the thing to bring the full board for recapture and approval. We'll continue to move forward with that in 2 weeks. Do this on two steps. An easy step, I think, is fees. Harder step is UTEP, but let's simultaneously do that. Come back to governance after you get some more input and some homework, and maybe we can look at what the policy take every, while we have the comparison, let's do what our fee structure is, standalone document, what our UTEP is, standalone document, and what our recommendations are to change it, put it in red, so almost like we did with this.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay. For sure. The only thing I want to give you on the way out, and I withheld this on purpose, so we didn't really discuss it beforehand, but this is a copy of our bylaws, but it is, Dr. Right there. Did I give it to you? Okay, good. This is a copy that you see has highlights on it.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, you brought this up before too, that we have titles that are no longer applicable. Managing director, we don't have a CFO, we don't have a COO. I think we need to address those. Do we need to take those out? Can they stay in for, future being filled in the future? And then there are a couple other things that I just think are problematic, whatever, meaning they have to be addressed. I don't think we're doing this just yet. Like there are whole sections, for example, saying what the chief operating officer is responsible for. We don't have this. So there are a number of things in there.
We're hiring a company to do it for us.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So let's look at that and work with council to maybe come up with some better language and anything else that we need to put into the bylaw.
Right.
This is something we should look at least annually.
Yes.
And we can make that as an agenda item or the one after, depending on how long UTEP takes.
And this we can change after.
Correct.
Yeah, this is right. We don't need to notify anyone too, right?
That is correct.
Amending.
Yep,
Just
just.
perfect sense. I'd like to the full board, but we could talk about it at any time.
And I can work with Bill and we can get you a black line for your February committee meeting if you want it.
Yeah, and if we can get to it, we can. If we can't, because UTEP's more important, we don't. But let's keep that on the burner, because we know we need to change that. That's something that's for a basic cleanup. And then obviously all this stuff that we do, obviously our consultants to help us post stuff to our website and change stuff like that. We need their assistance, obviously, once we're ready to go. All right, so not to make this any longer, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to talk about potential litigation. I'd like to do this at the committee level just so we can talk about some stuff that's come up in the last couple of weeks. And it shouldn't be long, but I'd like to do that with council present, with Bill present, and with the board. So I'll make that motion to go into executive session. Can I get a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. This is the Governance Committee of the Orange County Industrial Development Agency and Orange County Funding Corporation. We just came out of executive session. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. 15 seconds. All right, Dr. Rodock, all those in favor say aye. 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 Abstain. All unanimous. Thank you. Have a great night.